Hello, bruv. I know I shouldn't start another book, but this one seems a no-brainer. Dracula Go Home by Platt. As you can see, it's a library edition. And as you shall learn, it's a Franklin Watts. Isn't that the same as Spooks Deluxe? Sure is. Yes, came from the same company as Spooks Deluxe. All right, well, that's interesting to know. And as you shall see, well, the illustrations are by Frank Mayo. What year? 1979. Dracula Go Home. And as I said, the chapters are relatively short, so this book will be read chapter by chapter in increments of 4 or 5 pages at a time and should take about a week or so to complete. Chapter 1. It was a nice summer day in the country. The sun was warm, birds were singing, but instead of enjoying everything, I was holding my breath, scared stiff. Seeing the man in the cemetery was what shook me up. He was tall and very thin. His hair was slicked back, the old wet look. He had black eyes, a nose that curved down like a bird's beak, his face white as chalk. He was wearing a black suit. He was standing near the tombstones in the graveyard. That's him, I suppose. Dracula. I knew he was Dracula the moment I saw him. I was taking a shortcut from the station in a town called Hammond. It was summer vacation, and I was going to spend it with my Aunt Shirley. She owned an old hotel. My folks had an idea I could help out there. The train came in late and nobody was there to meet me. Some people in town gave me directions. I got lost on the way and had to cut through the cemetery. If I hadn't seen Dracula there, I might have had a terrific vacation. It's too crazy, I told myself first. But though I was new to the town of Hammond, I knew Dracula when I saw him. I'd seen him in TV movies plenty of times. The man who lives forever, the vampire. A vampire is something you can live without. It is a corpse that comes to life after midnight. It flies like a giant bat and sucks the blood of sleeping people. After it bites you on the neck and takes your blood, you become its slave. If the stories are true, the vampire Dracula has been living over 1,000 years. I stood rooted, afraid to move. His back was now turned toward me, and he was looking around at the tombstones. What's he doing? I asked myself. Vampires are supposed to sleep during the day. If he's Dracula, he's supposed to be in his coffin. The sun was still up. Behind the white tombstones was a big marble vault, the kind that has the underground burial chambers. The coffin for him to be sleeping in would be somewhere at the bottom, but instead of being asleep in there, here he was out in the open at midday, breaking the vampire rules. Maybe it got too hot for him to sleep, I told myself. I didn't know very much about vampires and their sleeping habits. Only what I remembered from the TV movies. Then I had an idea that made me feel better. Maybe he's not Dracula. After all, dummy. He's a man who just happens to look like him. I began to back away. A dry twig snapped as I stepped on it. The tall, thin man turned and saw me. His lips twisted in a snarl. I saw white teeth. His black eyes glittered under dark, frowning brows. They bored into mine from 10 yards away as if they were laser beams. I felt drained from the power in his eyes. My knees got weak. I backed off into the trees. My suitcase felt like it was full of bricks. In my hurry to get away, I slipped and tripped. I was sweating when I found the main road. I kept hurrying until I got to my aunt's old hotel. Before I ran up the steps, I looked around. He wasn't following me. I only felt that he was. Woo! That will be all for this chapter. Goodbye. Goodbye, perhaps.